My body does not respond well to being on a European time zone. So let's do this quick so I can get back to recovering some sleep. Honestly, I thought the group stage was really entertaining, even on day 3 where a whole bunch of the games didn't matter because most of the teams for playoffs had already been decided. There were still a lot of incredible matches that went down to the wire and that had a lot of stakes involved. There are a ton of best of ones from this group stage that I highly recommend you go back and check out, but for right now, let's talk about the teams that made it to the playoff bracket and then do a good old bracket prediction. FaZe, Team 1, NIP, and Damwon qualified as number 1 seeds, while Rogue, Sandbox, BDS, and SSG snuck in as number 2s. So of the 8 quarterfinalists, I technically got 75% of those qualified teams correct, and just cursed Chiefs and Empire. Good. Not really ever been a fan of Empire, so the NA fanboy in me is really happy that happened. Matchups for playoffs were drawn randomly on stream last night, so you can blame Milosh for Damwon playing Sandbox and forcing one Korean team to eliminate the other. He's also the reason 3 Latin American teams played in the same group at SI 2020. His hands are tainted and he must be destroyed. It does guarantee that one Korean team will be going all the way to the semifinals, which is the furthest that any APAC team has managed to go in Rainbow Six Premier event history, and will be the furthest that an all-Korean team has managed to go in that time span as well. But you have 2 contrasting styles in this game. The lunatic fringe, high-impact, calm in the chaos style of Damwon, and the almost anti-APAC, structured, systematic decimation of Sandbox. Both teams played very well in very drastically different styles to get to this point, but Damwon won the group of death. Like, that shouldn't be discounted at all. They beat SSG twice on the same map, they made Empire look like fools on Oregon, and Yas had more kills than any other player in the group stage. This team is a machine, they're on a roll, and I can't not root for them. Damwon in the semifinals. Sandbox already qualified for the Six Invitational by making it this far, so it's not a total loss. Quarterfinal number 2 is Team 1 against Rogue, which might be the only gimme of the whole bracket. This one should go to the defending major champs. Only team they lost to in groups was Vitality, which didn't really have that good of a group stage themselves, and they're looking good enough to maybe prove that their Cinderella run in Mexico wasn't a fluke after all. Alamau is making a serious case for event MVP right now. Meanwhile, Rogue, I don't trust in primetime. I didn't trust them to get out of groups, and the only way that they break the curse is if they manage to get to the semifinals, but I just don't see it happening yet. Not against the kind of onslaught I think Team 1 are going to bring against them. They were 1-for-2 with FaZe in their group overall, but they're getting back into the spotlight after a long time of being on the shelf internationally, and I just think they got the short end of the draw. Again, blame Milosh. This is no one's fault but his. Quarterfinal number 3 is FaZe and BDS. One of these teams getting killed in the quarterfinals is an absolute atrocity. Like, I'm legitimately pissed that this matchup is being forced to happen this early in the bracket. It's like G2 and NIP playing in the PGL major, except I have way more of a personal stake in this one. Admittedly, I don't really think BDS played any differently than they normally have been through their group stage, which, by the way, also didn't have very many high-quality teams in it. They only lost 1 game to NIP, but they just kind of looked like themselves. Meanwhile, FaZe Clan have been completely reinventing the wheel about how they play Rainbow Six since they weren't able to qualify for Mexico a couple of months ago. And I think that might present a slight shock factor in this series, working in FaZe's favor. As much as this game legitimately is a 50-50 coin flip, I'm just gonna pick FaZe and then move on before the pain of my betrayal becomes any more real. Last quarterfinal, the SI 2020 Grand Final rematch. Dear God, this bracket is insane. Same as BDS, NIP didn't really have a challenging group. Both Sonics and Invictus were relatively harmless compared to the two of them. Meanwhile, Space Station had to claw and scrape for every ounce of oxygen they could gulp down. They have more players with multiple 1vx clutches than any other team in Sweden, which means if something goes wrong, they're proving even the last man alive can win rounds if things are dire. Which you might argue is bad because that kind of thing isn't reliable performance. I say it just proves how baller they are as individuals, and that clutch stat is really just there for added flair. I'm taking SSG. Unironically, they survived the group of death and even had a chance to get the number 1 seed and get a different quarterfinal matchup. They looked damn good, and by comparison for this event, this is going to be NIP's first actual test of the major. That wasn't BDS on Villa. This would then make the first semifinal Damwon against FaZe. And I hate to admit it, but there's only so much gas I think the APAC train has left in the tank at this point. FaZe are a whole other monster that Damwon have yet to face ultimately. Furia doesn't really stack up as a decent comparison to FaZe overall, so the fact that Damwon beat them twice in groups doesn't really mean that much for this game. I think FaZe might be too much for them to handle. Like, I think both teams' styles are going to clash in a really cool way, but somehow this FaZe team seems like one that can really tilt the hell out of Rin and maybe take away a vital piece of Damwon's fragging potential. So even though the Koreans managed to make it to a semifinal, I think their time getting to a grand final is not quite here yet. But that being said, I'm a sucker for underdog stories. So please, Damwon, please prove me wrong. The other semifinal would be Team 1 against SSG, which that's as much of a toss-up as FaZe BDS is, to be frank. I'm gonna pray to gods I don't believe in that this one doesn't happen, but somehow I think Team 1's got the answer to most of North America's tendencies. Their history against North American teams is consistently in the green, whether we're talking Dark Zero or the Sonics. They understand how to beat those teams, and there's a lot of things that both those teams do take from SSG to a certain extent, so maybe that bleeds into this game. But the rest of this is really more of a gut feeling than rationale. Like, I knew Team 1 was gonna be good and probably win their group outright, but I didn't think they were going to look this good. So I think they win this game, but I don't have confidence in them in the grand finals. FaZe are an organization that has never won a premier Rainbow Six title internationally in the multiple years that this org has been sponsoring a team. They're always the bridesmaids, they're never the bride, and they have a history of making an impact domestically, but internationally seem like they're always a puzzle piece or two behind the pack. Not anymore. Their reinvention after failing to qualify for Mexico a couple months back is genuinely pretty astounding. Their analyst Dark seems to have taken a lot of the pressure off of the players to number crunch, and they look like they're in the best headspace they've been in since assembling this whole core roster under FaZe Clan earlier this year. And they also beat Team 1 in the Copa Elite Finals that got both teams to Sweden. They've gone years without getting a big title. But I think if the bracket has to be like this, that it's finally Astro and Cameraman's time to raise a trophy and win an international stable tournament in Rainbow Six. It would be a really hard-fought bracket, but if it works out this way, if they can manage to do it, then this will be one of the sweetest victories they will ever taste and the conclusion of a very well-deserved story. FaZe up. I'm not kidding when I say sleep has been pretty brutal the past couple days, but the post-show has been more than worth it to sacrifice a little bit of sleep for, so please make sure that you tune in for our last 3 days of it for quarterfinals, semifinals, and the grand finals, Friday through Sunday this weekend over at twitch.tv/CaliberJacob. Yeah, hope to see you there.